Well, anyways, if y'all have questions, please feel free to hit me up if you want to know about anything, really, what I'm working on or my thoughts on the genre or the publishing side of stuff. For those who don't know, I also run Shadow Alley Press with my wife, Jeanette, and we publish a whole bunch of lit RPG and progression fantasy as well. Some of the books that we've most recently released that you might know, we published Unintended Cultivator, Apocalypse Redux, Bog Standard Isekai, um, Blood Shaper, a whole bunch of other ones. We have Sky Pride in the lineup, which is going to be coming out here in 2026. And yeah, really excited about that one, but excited about all of our books. But yeah, we've been publishing lit RPG and progression fantasy since 2017. So we've been almost 10 years as a lit RPG publisher. I think we're Shadow Alley is one of the first lit RPG game lit progression fantasy book publishers sort of in the space. So we've been doing it for quite a while. Where's the puppet? William wants to know. Okay, well, I have this. I'm gonna do this. It's really weird. Everybody, don't judge me. They're all gonna judge me. I'm gonna put this puppet on at the request of William Merle. If y'all have questions, so my newest series, Discount Dan, is out. There's 2 books out. The 3rd book is recently out. I made this horrible thing for TikTok. It's really one of the most deranged things that I've ever made, and William wanted me to show it off to everybody. So I'm going to put this on, and I need all y'all to not judge me. But if you have questions for Croc Dog, who, for those who are not familiar with Discount Dan, Dan has a kind of pet sidekick. He's not really a pet. He's a mimic who's very bad at mimicking things. He was broken as a small mimic child, and so he was sort of outcast from the rest of the mimics. And he wants to make friends with people instead of eating them after reading the internationally best-selling book by Stephanie Meyer, Twilight. He realizes that predators can coexist with prey, and so he decides to help people. He has a Twilight fixation, and I made this puppet for TikTok. It's Croc Dog, made out of I'm trying to comment and borrowing your comment to reply to see if that fixes the problem on with my tech. I don't know. I can see it popping up on Facebook, just not like online. Anyways, so this is Croc. He's a puppet that I made for TikTok videos out of Croc shoe material. He's got big, dumb, googly eyes, just like the Croc from the book. And if you have any questions for Croc, I will answer as Croc. If you want to know what Croc's favorite meal is or the best scene from Twilight, Croc will be happy to answer too. Unrelated, but Croc would appreciate this. So I just bought the 20th anniversary Twilight book because it was just too perfect not to. So here's the 20th anniversary edition of Twilight. Now I do have to say this is pretty cool. So when you tilt the pages, you can see Bella on one side, and then you can see Edward on the other, and that's just about the coolest special edition book I've ever seen in my whole life. But yeah, so I will be here drinking tea, answering questions as James Hunter or as Croc. Feel free to drop them on Facebook, and I'll let you know. Doug says Croc is awesome. Thank you. Croc is of all of there's a lot of great sort of sidekick characters. I really love Kaz from Rogue Dungeon. For those who haven't read Rogue Dungeon, Kaz is a troll who kind of looks like this big lumbering meathead, and he kind of is, but he discovers cooking and falls in love with this sort of off-brand character that's a take on Guy Fieri. And he's constantly looking ways to make more gourmet dishes, and his battle cry is for salt. But Croc is right up there. Renholm is also a favorite of mine from the Vigilbound series. He's kind of an insane, manic pixie fairy who has a penchant for arson and is a kleptomaniac and just loves to steal things, particularly teeth and organs from people. So he likes stealing prosthetic limbs or really anything he can get his hands on. He's just a crazy little guy. But Croc is the most enduring character because he's so lovable and oddly innocent, despite the fact that he's a giant murder machine who also likes to eat corpses. That is impressive. Well, thank you. You know, it's not. It's the work of a deranged madman. You can even see it's got the little Croc button right on the nose there. Hi guys, it's me. I'm Croc. This is actually a voice when I was writing this character. So the backstory on Croc. My dog was coming in to say hi. I do voices for my children's stuffed animals, and my daughter has an axolotl. It's a big axolotl squishmallow named Noodle. And Croc's persona was actually cooked up before ever writing Discount Dan for Noodle, my daughter's axolotl. And so every night when I put her to bed, I'd snuggle in bed with her, and she talks to Noodle, who talks in this weird, like, Kiwi accent. I'm really channeling Korg from Thor Ragnarok, and I loved him so much that I was like, man, that would be a great character. And so when I was writing Discount Dan, Noodle became Croc, the dog. Croc should speak for himself. That's right, I should. I'm an independent mimic with my own voice, and nobody can tell me any different. So what do I like? Well, there's a couple of things that I really like. Obviously, I like Twilight by internationally best-selling author Stephanie Meyer. She's the voice of a generation. What else do I really like? I like froyo. Froyo is probably my favorite thing to eat, aside from corpses. But there's actually meat-flavored froyo in the back rooms, and so that's actually a delight that I really like. Dan thinks that it's disgusting, but that's because Dan doesn't have good taste or common sense. I also really enjoy water parks. A good slide, it's hard to put a price tag on a good slide. Is that better, William? Are you happy that Croc is speaking for himself? Doug says, VGO is one of the defining works of the VR lit RPGs. They seem to have fallen out of favor. Do you see any way they could return to popularity? That's a really good question. I would say, so the reason why VR lit RPGs were so popular, especially in the early days of lit RPG, like if you go back 10 years to when the genre was kind of breaking out for the first time, the reason why I think there were so many VR lit RPGs is because lit RPG was so new that readers did not understand what the genre was, or they like there were no tropes yet. They didn't understand the mechanics of why are there numbers in my book. And so VR was it was like a zero entry waiting pool for brand new readers coming into the genre, because they could pick up a book. It's high fantasy or it's sci-fi or whatever it is, but because it's in VR, they sort of intuitively understood, oh, okay, so it is like a video game, but a video game with stakes. And so it was a really easy entry point for readers who were new to the genre. And as the genres matured, there were a lot of those VR lit RPGs early on, but as the genres matured and more readers now understand sort of the genre as a whole, they understand the tropes, a lot of them don't even care like why there's a system at all. So a lot of the modern lit RPGs that you read that come out, there's just a system because, and there's no sort of explanation for why it is or why it exists. And sometimes you get one, but sometimes you don't. And most readers don't care about that anymore. They're familiar enough with the tropes and kind of with the idea behind lit RPG that they just roll with it. And they're like, yeah. Magic operates as a video game system. I totally get it. I totally understand it. You don't need to say anymore. And so a lot of lit RPG authors have sort of done away from that. And I think that there could be a swing back toward VR. It's sort of like a pendulum that goes one way and then the other. But I think one of the problems with a lot of the early VR lit RPGs, and this isn't necessarily a criticism, just a statement of what it was and that what readers maybe didn't like about them as much, is that it felt like they didn't have as many, the stakes weren't quite as high, right? Because it was like, it was a video game and a person was living their real life, and so there was oftentimes real life chapters. I'm going to take this off so I can drink tea, but if anyone has any specific questions for Crocs, I will, Porter does actually. I'll answer just a second. Let me get a sip of my tea here. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Right, lit RPG. I think the pendulum will swing back around eventually. But there were so many of those VR lit RPG series early on that I also think that readers just got burnt out on them, and they're like, man, this feels like every other lit RPG series that I've read, and so they just kind of moved past it and are on to different things. I still think that a lot of those early lit RPG series, though, are maybe some of the best entry points for new readers to the genre, because they like I said, zero entry waiting pool that makes it really easy to wrap your mind around what the genre is, what the mechanics are, what some of the tropes are. I still constantly recommend books like Ascend Online and Awaken Online. Both of those are staples that are phenomenal, and I think have really great writing and really great storytelling. The Completionist Chronicles by Dakota Kraut, I think, is another great example. Viridian Gate Online is also one that I constantly recommend. Porter says there's one VR series I'm following called Tunnel Rat. It does a pretty good job of alternating between game and life, and there's high stakes in both. Yeah, I've read Tunnel Rat on Royal Road. I haven't read the updated, edited version that's been released to Amazon, but I really enjoyed Tunnel Rat. I thought that it was really good, and I think the author does a good job of keeping the tension and the stakes high in both of those. And I think that that's one of the selling points. So it's definitely possible to still write lit RPG and have readers find it and connect with it. But I definitely think it's more difficult than just doing a straight isekai or a secondary world fantasy where the magic just is lit RPG for one reason or another. Let me see here. We got some more comments. I'm trying to work through them. Oh my goodness, there's a whole bunch here. Joy fills me, William Merle says. What is Croc's opinion on Harry Potter and Percy Jackson? Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not sure that Croc has read either Harry Potter or Percy Jackson. I think that at his heart, Croc is a hopeless romantic. He sort of, despite the fact that he's an amorphous, agenderless killing machine, I think he sort of views himself as Edward and Dan as Bella, in a weird sort of platonic way. I think of the two, he would probably enjoy the whimsy of Harry Potter a little bit more. But that's a good question. I don't know. I'll have to think about that a little bit more. Doug says VGL is one of the defining works of the VR lit RPGs. They seem to have fallen out. Oh yeah, we were just talking about that. Sorry about that, everyone. Anyways, yeah, Facebook be doing Facebook things. You are not wrong. So, anyways, we're back. For those who are joining in, again, I'm James Hunter, author of a bunch of things, and the owner of Shadow Alley Press, which I run with Jeanette. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear. Thank you, William. I appreciate that. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I will try to stay up to date on those and answer any questions you guys have. In terms of what I'm working on right now, so I've had a lot of people over on Reddit ask about Discount Dan 3. So Discount Dan 3 is done. That is Kiosk Kingdom, and it sort of ties up the storyline that's set up in Book 2. I won't go into too many spoilers for those who have not read it yet, but I will say that Dan finally confronts the franchiser, who is the owner of the Kiosk Network, in a truly epic, strange, and bizarre battle. Some of the highlights from Book 3, there are some questions that are answered. I think that they're good questions that are answered. There's a lot of exceptionally strange things. The finale features a astounding number of public domain Disney characters. So you have that to look forward to. Only they're like the worst versions of all of those public domain Disney figures. Dan, the Steamboat Studios is the home of the franchiser, and so it is nestled deep in the heart of the 10,000 acre wood, and all of the things that you're imagining are 100% true. So join with Dan and Croc as they take on the 10,000 acre wood, Steamboat Studios, and all of the corporate nightmares that accompany that. And now, so that's already done. It's already gone through editing. And the book is with Steve now for recording, and I'm plugging away on Book 4 while I'm simultaneously starting work on Book 5 of Vigil Bound. I'm still sad that I didn't get a robe. I'm sorry. Yeah, the robes were a hot commodity. It's funny. So I ordered a bunch of those robes, and my wife came to me and she knocked on the door and she was like, "Hey, I think there might be credit card fraud." And I was like, "Well, why do you say that?" And she's like, "Someone ordered like 20 robes from Walmart." And I was like, "Oh no, that's me. I ordered all those robes." And she's like, "Why did you order all of these robes?" I was like, "Just trust me. It's awesome. People are gonna love it." She thought it was probably the single worst idea that I've ever come up with in 20 or in 10 years of publishing. And I was like, "No, people are gonna like these. Trust me." And she was like, "No, you could not pay people to wear these terribly ugly robes." And but sure enough, we were at Lit RPG Con, and I think we gave them all out in probably like the first 20 minutes or so. Yeah. Let me get to that. Do you get the idea from a spark, like a small detail, or you tend to see the bigger picture first? What's your writing process like? Those are great questions. Sparks can come from anything. I think the larger story idea. Part of my process is I typically outline pretty thoroughly, and so I have a pretty good idea of what the story is going to be before I actually write the book. And that sort of helps on the developmental edit side of things. But unlike a lot of outliners, there's a lot of outliners. They write the outline, that's it. It doesn't change from beginning to end. That's the story that's going to be. And I always leave wiggle room for myself so that if I get a spark and I come up with a cooler idea, I can integrate it into the story. And there's lots of things, especially with a series like Discount Dan, where almost anything can be a spark. Anytime I'm in a weird liminal space or doing something with my kids, I'm like, man, under the right circumstances, this could be a horror movie. All of those things are great. Just yesterday, we were doing a fall festival at Evans Apple Orchard here in Kentucky, where I live, and they have a corn maze every year. And it was actually last year at this time that I had walking through that corn maze that I had come up with the cornfields for the cannibal kids that are in Discount Dan Book 2. I remember walking through it and getting hopelessly lost inside this corn maze and just thinking, oh my god, it would be horrifying if there was a monster in here hunting you down. Because you just can't see anything. You hear the rustles everywhere. The corn blocks out the whole skyline. Absolutely terrifying. And I love that. So a lot of times it's little sparks. It can come from just about anywhere. But in terms of like bigger picture story ideas for an individual book or even series ideas, they can really just come from anywhere. I would say that probably like 3 or 4 times a week I hop out of the shower and I just yell at my wife and I just say, I got the best idea I've ever had for a story. And then she very patiently listens to me tell the idea. And then she says, okay, go write it down and add it to the folder. So I have a enormous folder of just ideas for books that will probably never ever get written. But they just kick around in there, waiting for the day when I have availability to start a new series. Porter says, can you tell us about any of the other residents of Steamboat Springs that don't show up in the book directly? So honestly, and this is maybe more behind the scenes than you want, a lot of that stuff I don't even really think about. One of the things that I learned when I was doing the Viridian Gate Online Expanded Universe, and for those who don't know, so Viridian Gate Online was my first lit RPG series. It's a complete 8-book series, but there are a number of other expanded universe works set inside that same universe. And one of the things that I realized pretty early on is that I only really do world building directly as the character is experiencing that part of the world. A lot of writers, especially fantasy writers, will have these huge world building documents that detail just absolutely everything. They'll have 1,000 generations of dwarves listed out, in some appendices somewhere on their computer for reference. And I really don't do that. I have kind of a rough idea, and then as the characters experience a new part of the world, I think, man, what would be the weirdest, creepiest, coolest thing that they could experience in this moment, and then I'll kind of build that into it. But a lot of the stuff that they don't see, I don't really do a lot of time world building on, and part of that is because once you write that stuff down, your brain kind of gets locked into it, and that's kind of the well that you dip back into. And I kind of like going into those scenes fresh with sort of nothing on the table and sort of endless possibilities in front of me. And it also helps when you're doing co-authored stuff. or you're letting people write in your expanded universe, things like that. Because once you've written it down, you kind of have to adhere to those rules. But if you don't write it down, sort of there's more wiggle room for people to play with. But there are some really fun things in the 10,000 Acre Wood that don't get explored very much at all, but make like a very brief appearance. Dan doesn't really have to confront them, but there's 7 tribes of dwarves, and they all have like different elemental affinities. Peter Pan and the Lost Boys have airships that fly over Steamboat Studios, but all of the airships are the blimps are taken from the flayed hides of the pirates that they killed and mutinied to take their ships. So there's lots of like weird little details that aren't really explored, but that are super fun. Do you ever write people you know personally into your stories? Kind of, but not really. So there are a lot of cameo appearances. So sometimes people on Royal Road or people on Patreon will ask for like their name to be included in a story, and I'm usually pretty happy to do that. I'm always looking for names for characters to kill or things like that. And so I'm happy to just like pull from Royal Road or from audiences or from our Discord, things like that. In terms of actual like writing a real person into a book, like where their character shows through, generally not. Although I will, there's an exception to this, but generally I will I will pull on the experiences of people that I have in real life, and those can kind of make it into the story. And so maybe a character will kind of have the disposition of my dad or my brother or my sister or one of my friends in real life or a Marine Corps buddy who this character makes me think of. One of the exceptions is Jacob from Discount Dan, who's the Syndril alchemist. He is based off of one of our writers, actually, Jacob Greif, who writes the Apocalypse Redux series, among others. He was really, really helpful in the various early drafts of Discount Dan, and I wanted to thank him, and so I was like, hey, I'm going to put you in as a bit character, except the character sort of evolved and ended up being way more integral to the story than I had originally anticipated, and sometimes that happens. And so that character is based a lot more on Jacob than any other sort of character that I've written. All right, let me see if I can pull up some more of these comments here. That's okay. The Discord will help fill it out for you. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So yeah, Porter, who goes by Quill over on Discord, and he was actually the proofreader for Discount Dan Book 3, and did a great job. But he's always, as I post chapters to Patreon, he's always brainstorming ideas and asking questions that I had not even thought of that end up being super duper helpful and oftentimes rocket fuel for all of the weird things that I'm going to end up doing. Aw, it's Rachel Kneekick. It's so good to see you, Rachel. Congrats on 10 years. Go Red Cap Art. Okay, so funnily enough, Rachel mentioned this Red Cap artist. So I had played a D&D session with her and Jack Fields and Brian Norton and KT Hanna. I think that was all of them, although I might be missing one. And they asked me to do a guest character, and so I Woodle, the Red Cap, was kind of this. He was a Red Cap who was very bad at murder and had artistic impulses. So during the battles, instead of helping, he would sit and he would like doodle the battle scenes in very bad stick figures. But he was also based off of Noodle and Croc. My daughter's axolotl stuffed animal. Hey, Ryan Maxwell's in the house. Real quick, for those who have not checked out Rachel's series, y'all absolutely have to. I'm trying to remember the full name of it. I'm gonna Google it or Amazon it because I can't. For some reason it's slipping the top of my head. Rachel, remind me the name. You know what? I'll just click on Facebook. I'll just click on Facebook. That's the way to do it. Being a dummy. Oh yeah, the Knights of Eternity, and book one is Calamity. It absolutely excellent series. It's really really fun, and it's a complete trilogy. So if y'all are looking at, which is a rarity, I have written several complete trilogy or complete series, but inside of Lit RPG, that's kind of like finding a unicorn. There's a lot of book ones and book twos or forever series that go on forever ever ever without sort of an endpoint. But Rachel did a really good job and wrote a really really tight, fun, self-contained trilogy that was excellent. So y'all should go check it out. Absolutely fantastic. Portal or Legion Books publishes that one, and they're a good group. Ryan Maxwell is also down here in the comments, and Ryan just had his first Lit RPG debut release maybe a month ago, I think. Grand System Vending. I remember the name of that one. I'm sorry, Rachel, I failed you, but that one is also super fun. If you're a fan of DCC or Discount Dan or Buy More or any of those kind of pseudo post-apocalyptic Lit RPG stories with kind of like wonky, bizarre systems and flares to them. Grand System Vending about a vending machine apocalypse is super fun as well and worth checking out. All right, anybody else got any questions? I mean, I'm just hanging out. I got 20 more minutes to burn here. If not, what I'll do is I will start reading passages out of the Twilight. Again, this is the Twilight commemorative edition of the book right here. It is. Look at how beautiful this is. Look at how beautiful that is. And again, for those who didn't see it the first time, so when you turn the pages one way, Edward, sexy and sparkly, and then when you turn them the other way, Bella. Look at that. How incredible is that? So yeah, unless you want me to start reading from the beginning, the Twilight Saga, I mean, pop some questions into the comments down here. Congrats on 10 years. Oh, and for some reason it's gone. It's gone. When will you begin narrating your own books? So funnily enough, when I originally wrote Discount Dan, that was the first book I was going to narrate. And I had already worked out all of the character voices. I had written it in a way that I thought that I could do it justice. And I had actually narrated half of the book. And it was a pretty steep learning curve, actually. I sort of wrongly assumed that, like, oh, yeah, you just like talking to a mic and that's it. Oh, no, that is not it. There's so much more. Like, doing the narration is so much more complicated technically than I had ever anticipated. But I got Reaper, I got a whole setup, I was doing the whole thing, and I had recorded about half of the book. And then when Audible approached me about publishing it, I was like, hey, I really am interested in doing the narration for this. And I sent them my files, and they were like, aw, that's so sweet of you, but we're going to hire a real narrator. And so they very kindly turned down my offer to narrate my own books. But Steve Campbell, who's the current narrator of Discount Dan, or the narrator of Discount Dan, I should say, had been coaching me and helping me do my own narration. So he had given me a couple of lessons. He had helped me with Reaper. He had listened to early files. And so when they had asked, like, who do you want to be the narrator for Discount Dan, I was like, oh, well, it's got to be Steve. I mean, he's already way familiar with all the characters and the voices and all these things that I want to do because he'd been helping me with it. Quill, who's Porter, asks, are you still planning to do the Discount Dan anthology? I am. We've been slammed. We always have a bunch of cons sort of through the summer and into the fall, so it's been con season. But we have a bunch of authors that have been working on short story submissions for a Discount Dan anthology that I think we're going to call 1,000 Ways to Die in the Backroom. Most of the characters end up dying in horrific and grisly deaths. So one of the ongoing jokes in Discount Dan, for those who have read it, is that Croc is again this mimic who wants to help Dan and other dwellers not die horribly, and Croc has an absolutely abysmal track record in helping Delvers not die horrifically. And so every time Dan's getting ready to do something dumb, Croc will relate a story of the one time a Delver tried something like this and, had face melted off by a sentient swimming pool, or having their organs turned into peanut brittle, or their whole bodies morph into a pinata. And so it's Dan constantly relaying all of these failed attempts of him trying to help people and them dying horrifically. And so I thought that was a really funny way to introduce some fun things into the universe. So we're gonna do a Discount Dan anthology just for funsie. It's gonna be great. We'll release it. We'll get some cool cover art made up for it. And there's a bunch of authors over on the Shadow Alley Discord that are working on some stories right there. Beaten to death with their own limbs. That is actually surprisingly common. Lots of people beaten to death with their own limbs. What are you currently reading right now? That's a good stock question number 6, Doug. I really appreciate that. So a couple of things. I'm listening right now to Bog Standard Isekai 3. Jonathan McLean does the narration. Miles English is the author. That's one of a book that Shadow Alley publishes. I have read those books before, but I like to listen to them on audio, especially while I'm like working around the house or going to the gym or whatever. So I'm listening to Bog Standard 3 on audio, and Jonathan McLean does such a good job with it. And then currently I'm reading a non-lit RPG book called The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. It's a horror book. It's got very sort of liminal backrooms vibes. It's much less action adventure and more sort of like cerebral head trip. But it's super well written. I really, really like it. And I'm enjoying the heck out of it. And I think there's a lot of parallels there for things that I like. I'm a big horror junkie in general. And so if I'm not actively reading lit RPG or progression fantasy, it's usually something that's in the horror genre. All right, let me refresh this real quick. All right. Well, since I'm not seeing any more questions, again, at any point, any of you all can stop this. We're gonna crack the pages of this beautiful one. The real question is, should I narrate and read Twilight Book 1 in the voice of Croc through the puppet that I have made? Oh man, you guys really, really pulled it out there. But I'm gonna prepare. I'm gonna prepare myself with the Croc hand puppet. Let's see. Crossover, cameo, Easter eggs. Oh my god, there's okay. Ever consider any main characters or support characters from the other books or series showing up in future books? That's a really funny question. I have not thought about that actively. I don't do a lot of crossovers, but I will consider it now that you have proposed the question. So let me think on that a little bit more. And I'm sorry, the questions, I don't know why Facebook is Facebooking so bad right now. But yeah, if you have a question, I haven't gotten to it. It like disappears off the screen, and then I don't know what to do with it. Will we see any horror lit RPG coming out anytime soon, or is that too much of a niche? I don't think so. The Game at Carousel is an actual horror lit RPG, and it is extremely good. I enjoy it. It's out on Amazon. We don't publish it. I wish we did because I enjoy it so much. But the Game at Carousel, if you're looking for horror lit RPG, check that one out. There's one, I don't think it's come to Amazon yet, but it's on Royal Road, which is called The Cabin is Always Hungry. And it's kind of a Dungeon Core-esque horror lit RPG. And I think that one's super good too. I think that Dungeon Crawler Carl has opened up a lot of doors that just previously weren't open in terms of what readers will accept. Early on, we had published a book, or rather a friend of mine named Sam Witt had published a book called The Slayer Game, which was a horror lit RPG series. But that was in 2017, and it was a really good book. I had done the alpha read for it. I enjoyed the heck out of it, and it just kind of published and then went nowhere because I don't think the market was ready for that yet. But I think that DCC itself has a lot of horror elements in it. Discount Dan has a lot of horror elements in it, and so I think the genre is moving in that direction. What has been the most surprising feedback you've received from readers? I love the fact that all it took is me threatening to narrate this book in the voice of Croc as a puppet to get the comments coming. This is a great... I'm going to use this tactic on every live that I do from now on. What has been the most surprising feedback you've received from readers? That's a really good question too. So I listen to almost all of the feedback that I get from readers. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. The most surprising thing I think is that the characters connect with readers in ways that sort of baffle my understanding a little bit. Because again, like I hear a lot of authors talk and they're like, no, the characters are fully formed in my head. They feel like real people to me. And it is as much as I would love to say that is the way it is for me, it's really not. I have never been one of those writers where the characters like just kind of do their own things, and the characters always feel like characters to me. And so when readers come back and they're like, oh man, this character, they feel like a real person. I'm always flattered, but also a little bit surprised that people like it as much as they do. Do you have an artist you go to for your book art, and do you think they'd be willing to do a mock-up 3D version of Croc and Doggo form in Eldritch Tentacle form? Yeah, that's a good question. So we have a bunch of different authors that we use for Shadow Alley Press. The artist for Discount Dan is Luciano, who's done a bunch of other books in the genre. He's absolutely fantastic. We have an in-house artist that we use named Robert, and he does a lot of our covers, but he also does a lot of our custom artwork, and he would absolutely be happy to do that. William says, do you actually want to hear Croc read Twilight? Yeah, obviously I want to hear Croc read Twilight. That's what if it was not copyright infringement, I would totally have Steve Campbell read excerpts from Twilight and put it at the back of every Discount Dan book. If I could legally get away with that, I would 100% do that as a blooper reel, and I think that people would love that to pieces. Doug asks, what was your favorite part of Lit RPG Con, and what are you most looking forward to at the next one? Lit RPG Con, I went into it with relatively low expectations, if I want to be honest, because it was the first year con. I have never been to a first year con that was like well organized and that everything ran really seamlessly. So I was like, it's going to be fun, but there's going to be a lot of hiccups. It's going to be kind of a train wreck. It's going to take them a while to get their legs under them. I could not have been more wrong. Like Geneva and Emily and all the folks that planned it, they did a phenomenal job. It was one of the best organized, best run cons I've ever been to. But even more importantly than that, that was kind of the icing on the cake. It was just the level of community and camaraderie, which I, of all of my time doing cons, I've never experienced it quite like that before. I think Lit RPG, the Lit RPG community is really, really special. I've written in other genres as well. I started out in urban fantasy, and it's just not the same. And I think part of it is the newness of the genre. I think that because the genre is only really 10 or 11 years old, a lot of the people that have been writing in the genre have been writing the whole time. Matt started writing, I think, and publishing Dominion of Blades in 2018. Dakota's been around since 2015 or 2016. Michael Chatfield, who's another good buddy of mine, was an early adopter and was releasing in 2015 or 2016. A lot of these authors have been doing this together for a long time and have kind of seen the ups and the downs of the genre. We've done the con circuit together, and so every time I go to a con and I get to hang out with them, it feels a little bit like a family reunion instead of a work convention. I think Lit RPG Con felt like that. It felt like a big, extended family reunion. It was really, really fun, and I think the readers there were just incredible. They were all so excited to be there in a way I have just not ever seen at another convention, and it really was super refreshing. Alex says, I love the little crossover in Discount Dan with the For Salt poster with Kaz in Chef Hat from Rogue Day. Yeah, that would be super fun. I would love to do that. That would be really, really great. I think that Croc and Kaz would really get on famously well together. Hey, it's Richie. Richie says, "Hell yeah! Shout out to Con Mother Geneva and Aunt Emily. Yeah, they did just a fantastic job. It was really incredible." Quill says, "Still planning to kidnap you and other authors and taking them to Meow Wolf next year." So Meow Wolf is easily. I have not been to the one in Denver. Let me preface it with that. But Meow Wolf in Vegas was probably the number one inspiration for Discount Dan. I have done Meow Wolf in Vegas. So there's a writer convention that was called 20 Books to 50K that happened every year in Vegas. It's now called Author Nation. And we've been doing that one for 5 or 6 years now. And for the past 4 or 5 years, I always make it a sort of a pilgrimage to go out to the Meow Wolf exhibit that's there in Vegas. And the Meow Wolf exhibit is called Omega Mart. And Omega Mart is kind of this big interdimensional supermarket it's just Discount Dan and Backrooms bargains, right? Like I remember walking through it the first time. The story, it has kind of its own self-contained story, and Discount Dan is completely different from that, but the aesthetic of it is very much Discount Dan. And I remember walking through there and just thinking, oh my god, this is the coolest place I've ever been to. I want to write a series that takes place in a setting like this. And I had always been a big fan of the sort of the back rooms. I remember seeing the first original memes when they came out, kind of in, I think it was probably 2017 or 2018, and remembering thinking, man, the back room sounds like the coolest dungeon crawl of all time. And so after sort of wandering through Omega Mart and the Meow Wolf exhibit and sort of marrying that with the idea of the back rooms, I thought, man, that should be the series. And so if you ever want to experience Discount Dan's backroom bargains for the firsthand, go to the Meow Wolf exhibit in Vegas, and you will feel right at home. Mike says, write a scene for Steve to narrate as Croc getting a message from Steve, Magic Hands Campbell for a blooper reel. I like it. We talked about that, actually. I think that would be super, super fun. Will White does that, a blooper reel in all of his Cradle books with Travis Baldry, and I always listen to him and cackle. So that's not something I've done before, but something I wanted to do. Christopher says, hey, when Jack got a bunch of proficiency potions, was that just so that the readers could see the Grandmaster shift of his shadow powers? I'm going to be honest, that is a fantastic question that I do not have an answer to, because it has been long enough now that I don't remember all of the things that have happened in VGO. And this is one of the great parts about being a writer who's pretty prolific, is that I get to tell a lot of stories. But one of the downsides to that is that sometimes readers will message me on like Facebook or email or whatever, and they'll be like, hey, I read this thing in this book, can you elaborate on it? And I honestly can't remember, because I'm like, oh man, that was like 15 books ago. I don't even remember the main plot points of that book. So so oftentimes what I'll do is I'll say, what do you think? And then they'll tell me, and then I'll say, yeah, that was 100% right. Because I honestly don't know. So I would have to go back. I'm not even sure which book that's in. It's got to be like book either 6, 7, or 8, but I'm not 100% sure. So I would love to answer your question, except that now it belongs to the universe, and I don't have an answer. If I went back and I like reread the books, I'd be like, oh yeah, this was my train of thought process on that. But yeah, I can't remember. But I would love to go to the Meow Wolf exhibit in Denver, and also the one, I think there's another one in New Mexico, which was the first one. And I have not gone to either of those. It's been on my bucket list for years, and I don't know why I have not done it and gone there yet. All right, I got about 4 minutes left before my time is up. So if you have any last-minute questions, publishing, books, anything else, just let me know and drop it in there, or we can close it out in grand fashion. I'm gonna prepare just in case there's not any more relevant questions here. Let's see. All right, the puppet is going on, guys. This is the Croc puppet The abomination made out of real croc material. Chapter 1. First Sight. My mother drove me to the airport with the windows rolled down. It was 75 degrees in Phoenix. The sky a perfect cloudless blue. I was wearing my favorite shirt, sleeveless, white eyelet lace. I was wearing it as a farewell gesture. My carry-on item was a parka. In the Olympic Peninsula of northwest Washington state, a small town named Forks exists under a near-constant cover of clouds. It rains on this inconsequential town more than any other place in the United States of America. It was from this town and its gloomy, omnipresent shade that my mother escaped with me when I was only a few months old. Sorry, I gotta do this here. It was in this town that I'd been compelled to spend a month every summer until I was 14. That was the year I finally put my foot down. These past 3 summers, my dad Charlie vacationed with me in California for 2 weeks instead. It was to Forks that I was now exiled myself. An action that I took with great horror. I detested Forks. I loved Phoenix. I loved the sun and the blistering heat. I loved the vigorous, sprawling city. Quill says, I have never read Twilight. I can't believe this is how it happens. Okay. All right, guys, that's my time. I'm so sorry. That was the first page of Twilight, internationally best-selling series. So thank you guys for hanging out with me on this live. I really appreciate y'all. And we will talk to you guys later.